to the week that was on hoghouseblog. I'm Denise Ross. In this, our first edition, we are going to be looking back at the first week of the South Dakota Legislature 2007 and the second inaugural of Governor Mike Rounds.
That you might have heard me say that working together, we can make South Dakota even better somewhere along the way.
Governor Rounds gave two speeches. The Republican legislative leaders held a press conference on the Capitol's grand staircase, and Senator Tim Johnson entered rehab and is now talking. But it is the man who said the least who pretty much blew everyone else off the South Dakota political map this week. Senator Dan Sutton, a Flandreau Democrat, took the oath of office on Tuesday, and his Senate colleagues drew up rules under which they will operate his disciplinary hearing. Sutton's lawyers then got a restraining order from a judge to delay and possibly cancel the disciplinary hearing. Then the rest of the Senate cried foul to the Supreme Court. What's next? Well, there are a few options. In this time of constitutional tightrope walking, of separation of powers questions that go to the very core of our very democracy, one thing remains certain. There will be hearings. Some kind of hearings. Oh yeah, and when legislators were drawing up rules to guide the Sutton case, another lawmaker who might very well face disciplinary action was at the table.
But I think that the simple majority at that point, as long as the 8.8, as long as the votes there are 2/3 or 3/5, where you're adopting the report, I think that's the critical area for probably looking at more than a simple majority. So a simple majority to get the committee going and up and running would make sense to me, and then use a different vote measure as far as the adoption of the report or censure, etc.
Hunt's work on the Rules Committee, rendering rules under which he might one day be judged, produced not the tiniest untoward vibe in the room, or at least I didn't notice any. An alert reader, Leah Lynn, pointed out the wackiness. Thanks again, Leah Lynn. During 2007's first week of the South Dakota Legislature and the first week of the United States Congress, the bonds between Pierre and the Beltway were as firm as ever. Governor Mike Rounds had only the warmest words of encouragement for Senator Tim Johnson and his family as the senator continued his recovery from brain surgery.
We are reminded of our friend and our colleague, Senator Tim Johnson. The thoughts and prayers of all of us go out to Tim, to Barbara, and to their family as we look forward to his speedy recovery.
All of South Dakota continues to have him in our thoughts and prayers every day. He works for all South Dakotans, and we all want him to have every opportunity to return to work for us. We want Senator Tim Johnson and his wife Barbara and his family to know that all of South Dakota and all of us are unified in wanting our friend Tim to get well again. That banner will be in my office today and tomorrow, and there is plenty of white space on it so that all of us and anyone else who desires that's in the Capitol today or tomorrow can write a get well message to Tim on it, and we will send it to him in Washington and hope it will help in his full recovery.
As Governor Rounds headed into his second term, he focused on the state's energy production.
South Dakota has been very successful in expanding our ethanol industry. We currently have 11 operational ethanol plants. 4 new plants have broken ground. 1 plant is in the planning stages, and 5 have announced expansion plans to date. These ethanol plants, they're not just buildings. They're investments in our own communities. They provide good jobs in our rural communities. They're a premium market for our farmers' crops, and they're renewable energy sources for an energy-hungry nation.
South Dakota is ranked first in the nation in farmer-owned plants, first in percentage of corn used, and fourth in total ethanol production. South Dakota's ethanol plants produced more than 550 million gallons of fuel in 2006. South Dakota has become a recognized leader in research and development in the area of ethanol and other biofuels, as well as the first state to be energy independent by producing more ethanol than petroleum consumed. As a result,
On veterans,
on September 15th and 16th, we honored our state's 28,000 Vietnam-era veterans who bravely and dutifully served in Vietnam and during that time from 1961 to 1975. We also honored and remembered the 207 who did not come home. Over 1,800 volunteers made that weekend one of the most special and meaningful events in our state's history. The responses we have received from our veterans and their families have been incredible and overwhelming. But what we did for them is little compared to what our Vietnam-era veterans and all of our veterans have done for us. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me as I ask all of our veterans and all of our current members of the armed forces that have worn the uniform of the United States of America so proudly to please stand and be recognized. Veterans, please stand and be recognized.
and on governors past.
Way back in 1918, January of 1918, one of South Dakota's greatest governors, Peter Norman, had a message to the people of South Dakota. He said, "We are all proud of our state, of our people, and of its progress. Our state's resources are wonderful, and its future will be greater than its present. It is all important that we come to a full realization of our possibilities and work together for the common good." Those words are as true today as they were 89 years ago.
100 years ago, the legislature was still meeting in a wooden building just a few hundred feet from right here. They even passed a law that year to expedite the construction of the new Capitol where we are right now. In his last State of the State speech, Governor Samuel Elrod said he wanted higher wages for teachers, and he was worried that there was too much red tape in the schools, and that cigarette smoking seems to be quite prevalent among school boys. Governor Elrod also proposed a new resident hunting license fee of $1. He concluded that grain dealers were making too much money at the expense of farmers. And he complained that divorces were too easy to obtain in South Dakota. He also said he was looking forward to attending the 3rd annual state fair because the first two had been so successful. And he said he was quite pleased that South Dakota was gaining more railroads and that South Dakotans, quote, have never been so well fed and clothed, end quote.
Thanks, everybody, and have a good week. We'll see you next weekend.